All right, we're in West Palm Beach, ready for the owners' meetings. Here's the famous photo. This is what we all wait for every single year at the owners' meetings. All of the NFL coaches in one spot. That is a fake background of the Breakers, although they are in one of the ballrooms of the Breakers. If you want to zoom in on Kyle Shanahan, well, look, there's Jim Harbaugh. There's Kyle Shanahan. Doesn't look all too thrilled to be at the owners' meetings, but he's there. He's got a nice watch. I guess I could compare watches with Kyle Shanahan as this event proceeds. There's mine right there. Looking good. Who do you think has a nicer watch? Me or Kyle Shanahan? Anyway, West Palm Beach owners' meetings. This is where it's going to go down at the Breakers Hotel. There's a lot that we can talk about as far as what to expect from the 49ers, talking about their strategy over the course of the offseason. It's going to work like this. John Lynch tomorrow morning, so be sure to tune in. We'll have video of John Lynch after he speaks. I'll obviously have some analysis as well. Then there's going to be Kyle Shanahan on Tuesday morning and Jed York probably on Tuesday, but we shall see exactly what time he goes. I'm guessing Tuesday for Jed York, though. So you're going to get to hear from all three of the 49ers decision makers, the chief decision makers over the course of the next couple days. We have thoughts, obviously. We also have some more pictures. This is from Jordan Rodrigue. This is the two Rams decision makers. One of them is an ex-Rams decision maker in James Gladstone. He's now Jacksonville's general manager. So Les Snead, the Rams GM on the left, James Gladstone on the right. The reason that I bring these two guys into the fold is that the 49ers have been obviously using the Rams formula, and that's going to become even more clear over the course of the next month when the NFL draft hits. James Gladstone on the right, he's only 34 years old. His quote this offseason is probably the most important one to be familiar with so that you can understand what the 49ers are doing and how they have been operating. So a reporter asked James Gladstone why Jacksonville has or wasn't adding any defensive linemen. And I think the same question can be asked of the 49ers and John Lynch. And Gladstone, who used to work with the Rams, as I just established with that picture, said, if you add a veteran at this point, he could just be standing in the way. We're going to allow these rookies to get a chance to get out on the field and help us this coming fall. There's an opportunity cost to adding flawed players, especially flawed players at higher salaries at this point. So Jacksonville's loaded up on draft picks. They have 10 of them. The 49ers have 11 of these draft picks. So the opportunity cost is real. The 49ers recognize that, just like the Rams recognized it with a model that was applied in years prior, notably in the 2023 season. I think Jacksonville, run by James Gladstone, who worked under Les Snead with the Rams, recognizes that too. And I think that you're going to see a lot of teams try to vie for positioning in a draft that is going to be very, very meaty along the defensive line. And whoever drafts best is going to be the team that comes out on top. And guess what? That is the way that you're going to have to win in the NFL. You can't just keep pouring money into problems. Expect to hear that from John Lynch tomorrow. Expect to hear that, especially from Jed York on Tuesday. Kyle Shanahan may even touched on that a little bit, although he typically stays away from the money questions as the head coach. But pouring money into issues has never been a long-term solution in the NFL. Despite that, the 49ers will probably still end up as number one in cash spend, but they had to restrain outside of the quarterback position, which has to be paid. Obviously, that makes sense in the NFL. But outside of the quarterback position, the 49ers had to rearrange the deck chairs to become more financially efficient, because the NFL draft is what ends up determining success or failure in this league. You can run from it, but you can't hide. And the 49ers had some pretty tough luck in the draft in 2021, 2022, 2023, especially 22 and 23. It got to the point where they had to hit in 2024. It looks like they did, but guess what? They still have to hit again in 2025. 2025. And they've got 11 picks, and they've stacked the comp picks not just in 2025, but in years prior and in years moving forward, where they absolutely have to build out the meat of the roster. The reason you can't run from or hide from the draft is because even the team filled with the most A-list players, like the largest A-list core ever, probably 10, 9, 10, that's still only going to be a fraction of a full football roster. This is a sport featuring massive rosters, and every single player on a roster is important. So if you have a 53-man roster, nobody cares if you have 10 A-list players plus 43 subpar players. The meat of that roster from spots 10 to 53 has got to be strong, has got to be fast, has to be healthy, has to be hungry. If it isn't, then it doesn't matter how many star players you have in that A-list core. We've seen so many teams flame out with a strong A-list core and nothing else. The 2011 Philadelphia Eagles come to mind. So you've got to be strong from spots 10 to 53. That's where the 49ers started to get really old, really beaten up, really slow last season. So they said, hey, we've got to renovate this roster, just like the Rams said the same thing back in 2023 following a 5-12 season. So I can guarantee you that the 49ers are going to be saying a lot of the things that I'm saying over the course of the next few days. They haven't said them yet, but I have a brain. I'm able to look at strategy and deduce what San Francisco's doing. I'm able to look at some of the clues that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have left in the past. And, last time that we've heard from John Lynch was about a month ago at the NFL Scouting Combine. It was before free agency, and he led us to believe a lot of the things that the 49ers ended up doing. Like he said, they're going to cut back on cash spend. Why? Not because they want to be cheap, but because spending a lot of money wasn't working. They're terrible on the defensive side of the ball, terrible on special teams in 2024. So, and terrible in run defense, especially. So they've replaced leadership in those phases of the game, right? New defensive coordinator is Robert Saleh. New special teams coordinator is Brant Boyer. Gone is Nick Sorensen. Gone is Brian Schneider. You've replaced leadership, but you've also have to replace some of the players, and you have to replace some of the mentality that you've been attacking this with. The 49ers are a team in transition. That's for sure right now, right? A team that had come off of the closest margin ever away from a Super Bowl in 2023. They lost in overtime. They were trying to cram one more run in. So it was kind of last dance mode. Let's just see how many veterans we can add to this team that might fit, that might be able to keep this afloat. That failed in 2024. They were too old. They were too slow. They were too injured. So they recalibrate now, and they go back to, they're just trying to mortgage the future in 2024. They're just trying to make this last as long as possible, the run that they were on. Once they went 6-11, it became very clear that they need to go back to square one, and that is how every single NFL team has to build things if they want long-term success. They couldn't just rent out short-term success anymore. It wasn't working. At the $334 million price tag that we saw in 2024, it was not working. So they hit the reset button. They had to get younger. They had to get faster. They had to get healthier. And that is the strategy right now with 11 picks coming up in the 2025 draft. Shouldn't be all that complicated. Some people are trying to make this complicated online. You look at it, I go into my comment section. It's like, guys, I think most people understand what the 49ers are doing here, because the lifeblood of this league for speed, hunger, youth has to be the NFL draft, period. Regardless of price tags, you just want younger players to fill spots 10 to 53. Because ultimately, you're not going to be able to bring in veteran A-listers for spots 10 to 53. Maybe spots 1 through 10 are going to be able to have that for you, but not spots 10 to 53. So I guarantee you that John Lynch is going to speak of that tomorrow. Just come back here. When John Lynch does speak and we go, to our summary, or you watch the video on this channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you're ready for that video to drop of John Lynch speaking. But when he does speak, when Jed York does speak, when Kyle Shanahan does speak, I challenge you, come back to this channel, What are they going to be talking about? They're going to be talking about this cost efficiency. They're going to be talking about the importance of building through the draft. They're going to be talking about strategy. Maybe even they'll invoke the Rams formula from 2023, because that's exactly what we wrote about. And it's very obvious that the 49ers are following that. The Rams formula, which was really pushed by these two guys, Les Snead and James Gladstone, who has the quote of the offseason so far as being able to track what the 49ers are doing, being able to make some understanding of what San Francisco is doing. But, when I talk about A-list players, we always have to refer to the roster. It's like building a house, right? And the house has structural supports, has foundational pillars. Let's call it a mansion, right? A mansion has got these big, impressive pillars. Well, you want pillars at every sector of the house to make sure that the house doesn't collapse. You can't just have all your pillars in one spot. And the pillars are highlighted in yellow. So the 49ers have these pillars up and down the whole roster. They've got Purdy, McCaffrey, Juszczyk, 1, 2, 3. Kittle is 4. Trent Williams is 5. Bosa is 6. Fred Warner is 7. Deommodore Lenoir is 8. I think they could use at least 2 more pillars. But even if they have 2 more pillars, which would be another guy, a defensive tackle, and another guy along the offensive line, hell, even if they have those 2 more plus somebody like Malik Mustafa at safety, that is 11 pillars, but you still have 40-plus roster spots to fill. So how are you going to fill those 40 spots? It's not going to be with high-priced players. The salary cap doesn't allow for that. The salary cap will allow for you to have about 10 or 11 pillars max at a time. So you see the pillars highlighted in yellow now. How do the 49ers fill out the rest of the team, specifically attacking the dark red here, which are holes on this San Francisco depth chart? And the answer is always, without fail, going to circle back to the NFL draft. It's the only way that you can do it long-term, sustainably. What San Francisco has done in order to make sure that they're younger, that they're faster, that they are hungrier, is they're going younger at the spots that aren't the pillars. You trust Christian McCaffrey. You trust Kyle Juszczyk. You trust Purdy, Kittle, Trent Williams. I get it. Yeah, those are the difference makers. Those are the oomph players. But at other positions, you need to glean as much ceiling at a cost-controlled basis as you possibly can. Guys like Leonard Floyd and Malik Collins, and this is going to be the first time that we hear from the 49ers brass ever since they cut them. You know what the floor and the ceiling of those players is. You know that you're getting a decent pass rush from Leonard Floyd and Malik Collins. You know that the run defense probably isn't going to be very good. You know exactly who those players are, with the emphasis on the ceiling. You know where you're capped out at with those guys. They're not going to get any better at this stage of their careers. The draftees, that's a different question, right? That's an entirely different proposition. You're not as sure about the floor of the draftees, but you're also not as sure about the ceiling of the draftees. If you were sure, then Brock Purdy wouldn't have gone number 262. Jawan Jennings wouldn't have gone in the 7th round. George Kittle would not have gone in the 5th round. The draft is this exciting grab bag. You don't know what you're going to get. It's a box of chocolates, right? We're going to use Forrest Gump for that NFL draft. And the 49ers know that with the players they had on the roster last season, with guys like Malik Collins and Leonard Floyd, the ceiling definitely wasn't high enough. The floor might have been fine. It was pretty low, though, if you look at how the defense performed. But they see, even with a better defensive coordinator, even with a better supporting cast, they see that ceiling with those players not being where they need it to be. And the numbers agree with them. The number 26 defense, it was bad. I think some 49ers fans need a reality check. This defense sucked last year. Wasn't good. So they want the higher ceiling. And the way to swing for the fences to get that higher ceiling is to make sure that the rookies have room to perform, that you add the rookies in what is a strong draft class, and that there are not veterans standing in the way. This is what James Gladstone said. If you add a veteran at this point, he could just be standing in the way. The opportunity cost is too high. You have to allow the rookies to get a chance to get out on the field and help this coming fall. The strategy worked for the Rams. The 49ers are going to be talking about the same thing at the owners' meetings. I 100% guarantee you that when you come back here after John Lynch has spoken, after Kyle Shanahan has spoken, after Jed York has spoken, they're going to be talking in a lot of the same way that I'm outlining right now, because I talk about strategy. I analyze what this team is doing. I come at this from an objective perspective, and it is not that hard to figure out. That's why I wrote the whole piece on how the 49ers are emulating the Rams. This came out on March 17th. So tomorrow's going to be the 2-week anniversary of this piece, and John Lynch is going to speak, and we're going to get, I think, a little bit more specific intel about the direction. But basically what the Rams did is they built an entire defensive line through the draft. That's why you see all the colorful shading here in the middle. And the 49ers last year looked like this. It was much more sparse. San Francisco wants to take their D-line build, which is at the bottom of the screen right here, and they want to make it look a whole lot more like the Rams D-line build. Will there be growing pains? Yes, but this is the biggest bet there is on Brock Purdy. You're okay with the floor of the defense lowering so you could take a higher swing at the ceiling with these less known commodities of the NFL draft. And while you do that, you're counting on your offense to carry the way. You're making a big financial bet in Brock Purdy, and you're taking a big football bet on Brock Purdy as well. The Rams, it worked out for them. They were a bad defense for a while. In 2024, they were one of the top defenses once December came around, and they turned the corner. So this is classic team building. You know, I'm getting pushed a lot of YouTube videos right now of 49ers teams in the 90s, and it's making me relive my childhood watching Steve Young, Garrison Hurst, J.J. Stokes, Jerry Rice, Steve Mariucci. I mean, sometimes it pushes me a 1992 video. That's a little bit before my time. I was born in 88, so I don't really remember 92. But sometimes it pushes me a 97 video, a 98 video, maybe 1996. Those 3 years were fascinating. 96, 97, 98. The 49ers were a team in transition. After 96, George Stieford stepped away, resignation. Steve Mariucci took over in 1997. So this is how the timeline went for the 49ers of the 90s. And we can learn a little bit something from it right now. In 1994, the 49ers had a super team and they won the Super Bowl. But then free agency and the salary cap and all that took its toll on the 49ers, slowly whittled the 49ers down over the course of the back half of the 90s. But they still were able to field some really good teams. 1995, they had the number one defense, but they didn't have a running game. So they didn't have the offense. They let Ricky Waters go after 1994. Derek Lavelle was the 49ers' top running back. But the fatal flaw of the 95 Niners, who weren't able to repeat as Super Bowl champions, was the lack of a running game. Steve Young had to drop back 65 times against the Packers in the postseason. So that was the fatal flaw. It wasn't defense. Pete Carroll was the defensive coordinator. In 1996, it also wasn't defense. Pete Carroll was the DC in 95 and 96, and the 49ers had really good defenses both of those years, but they didn't quite have the running game. They were trying to run some outside zone. They're trying to run basically a Bob McKittrick, Shanahan leftover offense. Mike Shanahan was the offensive coordinator from 92 to 94, but they didn't have the running back to do it in 95 and 96. So the offense eroded over those 2 years. So it was a tragedy, right? Because the 49ers had a great defense in 95 and 96, but the offense didn't have the running game, even though it had some other superstars, but it didn't have that final complementary piece to get past the Green Bay Packers in 95 and 96. So what the 49ers did entering 1997 was they invested in big, heavy guards. Remember Kevin Gogan, Ray Brown? They brought in big, strong guards, and they moved to more of a downhill running attack. They also brought in Garrison Hurst by that 1997 season. And they finally had a run game. And they were able to pair it in 1997. This was their most talented team since winning the Super Bowl in 94. They were able to pair the newfound run game with obviously Steve Young in the pass game with a defense that was still at the very top. Pete Carroll had left to take another head coaching job, but the defense was still good. They had everything in 97. But Jerry Rice tore his ACL. So I say this is a tragedy because it is. They didn't have all the ingredients in 95 and 96 They did have all the ingredients by the time that Garrison Hurst showed up in 97, but the greatest football player of all time, Jerry Rice, tore his ACL in week 1. He tried to come back, but he didn't tear. He cracked his patella when he came back. It was a miraculous return, yet a tragic re-injury against the Denver Broncos on Monday Night Football. So, long story short, the 49ers lost in the NFC Championship again to the Green Bay Packers. 23-10 was the final score. So, the point here is that even when everything lined up for the 49ers, as far as strength of offense and strength of defense, not everything lined up in the injury category. And I think they would have beaten the Packers with Jerry Rice in 97, but they didn't have Jerry Rice, so they lost. By the time that 1998 rolled around, the 49ers defense had aged out. You age out quickly in the NFL. They got old by 1998, and the defense tumbled to the middle of the pack. Now, Steve Mariucci, the new head coach in 97, had a whole year by that time. This was an offensive-minded head coach. Steve Mariucci had actually developed Brett Favre as the QB coach in Green Bay. But Steve Mariucci had gotten the offense roaring in 98 because Jerry Rice was back and he was healthy. Terrell Owens was about to become T.O. He became T.O. with the big catch. They finally beat the Packers, but they lost to the Atlanta Falcons, and Garrison Hurst got hurt down early in that game. It was down the stretch of the season, but first play from scrimmage against the Falcons, he snapped his ankle, and again, the 49ers faced the tragedy of 95 and 96, the era in between Ricky Watters and Garrison Hurst. So they just couldn't quite catch lightning in a bottle. We all know what happened in 99. Steve Young got hurt, concussion, ended his career. But it looked like, in 98, they finally had the Super Bowl caliber offense again. They just didn't quite have the defense. And, maybe the offense would have been able to strain through that year, even with the worst defense. But I think the defense aged out. And it just shows you that it's so hard to time things up in this league, to have the elite offense and the elite defense. The closest the 49ers have gotten to that in the Shanahan era was 2022. They had the top offense and the top defense in football. But Brock Purdy tore his elbow. It's when the Eagles got Brock Purdy. So the 2022 49ers were a lot like the 97 49ers in that this was a juggernaut on both sides of the ball, but a crucial torn ligament for Jerry Rice. It was the ACL. For Brock Purdy, it was the UCL in 2022, knocked things awry. I look now at the build of the 49ers on a year-by-year basis, and I say the defense in 2024 clearly aged out, kind of like the Niners defense of 1998. And it was even worse. I mean, it aged out a lot quicker. I think these days, that age wall comes crashing down on you because the league is so fast. Young guys entering the league every year is so fast. So they got slow. The run defense got bad. They weren't nearly hungry enough, I think. The coaching wasn't as good. The defense hit that wall in a huge way. It's good the 49ers are renovating the defense now because you want to hit, especially 2026. I see 2026 as a year where this offense can really peak. But you want to make sure that's paired with a really good defense. Now, in the interim, in 2025, will there be some growing pains for the defense? Yes, of course. They're going to be adding a lot of new players. They have to through the NFL draft. I mean, we look at the way that the Rams have built this. This was year 2 of the 2-year cycle. The Rams got to this point. And it still took a while for them to get roaring, to get going late in the season. But if you're looking at how the 49ers can best rebuild the defense, the renovation of that part of the football team has to start this offseason. And it clearly is starting this offseason. They need as many spots as possible for some of these draftees to come in and do their thing. This show is brought to you by Mando. Mando has been sponsoring this week of shows. From the founders of Lumi, Mando Whole Body Deodorant is helping men conquer their odor in a new way. Formulated with mandelic acid, Mando has long-lasting 72-hour odor control that actually stops odor before it starts. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, and free shipping. As a special offer for our listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to 40% off your starter pack, just use the code Lombardi at shopmando.com. That is shopmando.com. Please show support of our show and tell them that we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. That is shopmando.com. So, the lesson of the 1990s 49ers, trying to find an offense and defense to line up, that's what the 49ers have to find now. And it's been so clear over the course of the past 2 seasons that the defense has been regressing. Offense has stayed top 10. I mean, the offense without injuries last year, I think you could easily say they would be in the top 5. The defense, though, even the lack of a clean bill of health, and the lack of a clean bill of health had a lot to do with the defense's age, but they had already dropped down to number 10 in 2023, and then this was the number 26 defense. You can't just blame injuries on a tumble from what was number 1 in 2022 to number 26 in 2024. This has not been heading in the right direction. It is time for a renovation on that side of the football. The 1990s 49ers offer the cautionary tale. A defense that was elite in 95, in 96, even in 97, but hit the wall and fell off in 98. And when they fell off in 98, the 49ers could not pair that elite offense with an elite defense the way that they did in 97. So they didn't get that second shot at the NFC title game. In 97, it was robbed from them because of the Jerry Rice injury. Football is tough. Getting the stars to align is really hard. But what the 49ers are trying to do now is maximize the chances of the stars aligning. Recognizing that the defense wasn't what it needed to be over the course of the past 2 seasons, even in 2023, it wasn't what it needed to be. To be honest, they got lucky that Brock Purdy and that offense supercharged them past the Detroit Lions, because that was a bad performance from the 49ers defense in that game. They need to get the defense back up to 2022 levels, and the only way to do that is to get younger, faster, healthier, and hungrier. That's the core 4. Younger, faster, healthier, hungrier. I guarantee you that we're going to hear some variation of that from John Lynch, Jed York, and Kyle Shanahan over the course of the next couple days. Here from Florida. Hello from West Palm Beach. Went out to a nice dinner. Going to go check out the Breakers tomorrow. Early in the morning is when it starts. Then John Lynch will speak. We'll probably have him in a conference room. You should hit the subscribe button right now, because a lot of information should come flooding in here over the next couple of days, and I'll make sure that I have everything for you first up on this channel. Bo Adams saying, Purdy won that game. Pay the man. NFC Championship game. He was huge. But, I have to say the team won that game. Especially, it was an offensive performance. It was an all-around performance. Was Purdy the most important piece? Of course. He's the quarterback. He's going to be paid the most. What's silly to me, a lot of people are like, oh, the 49ers are cheap. The 49ers spent the most money in the entire league, or the second most last year. They modified the numbers up on Spot Rack, but the 49ers are at number 2. They spent $334 million in 2024. They led the league in spending. This year, they are about $53 million off the lead, but if Purdy brings in 60, 70 million of cash this year, which I would expect him to, even if that's not his average, but he'll make that much on a signing bonus, the 49ers are going to be the number 1 spending team again. So they're not cheap. The 49ers were cheap. They wouldn't offer Dre Greenlaw more than the Broncos did. The 49ers were cheap. They wouldn't be on pace to be the number 1 spending team again this season, which they are, given Brock Purdy. It's obvious that they're just rearranging how they're spending. Like, if you just look at this a little bit deeper than a simple tweet, you could see that the 49ers are financially getting their ducks in a row before Brock Purdy is going to be making big time money. And that's going to be happening at some point this offseason. Who would you rather have on your all-time team, Jerry Rice or Chuck Norris? I think Jerry Rice. There's never been anybody better to do it, I think, in the whole sport at any position than Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice's last 7 years were a borderline Hall of Fame career. And by last 7 years, we're talking Jerry Rice, basically past the age of 35. Jerry Rice was dominating everybody at older than 35. 30 is old in football terms. And Jerry Rice was going out there and owning people 35, 36, 37, 38. I mean, he had a 1,000-yard receiving season past the age of 40. Like, this guy he was something completely else. I'm going to go to Jerry Rice at Pro Football Reference. Greg Papa and I, Mike's going to drop the video at some point. Greg Papa and I had a great discussion about how dominant Jerry Rice was, because Greg covered Jerry in his final years with the Raiders. But at age 40, he had 1,211 receiving yards. At age 41, he had 869 receiving yards. Hell, at age 42, he had 429 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. The guy was an absolute monster. Age 35, by the way, 1997 was when Rice tore his ACL. So at age 35, that's a career ender for probably anybody else to ever play football. But he came back from the torn ACL at age 36 in 1998 and delivered 1,157 yards. He averaged over 1,000 yards per season from age 36 to age 40 after tearing his ACL. The answer to any football question about who the greatest of all time is should be Jerry Rice. Would I get a P.O. box for subscribers to send stuff? Should I? If that's a good idea, let me know. Yeah, the 49ers outbid Denver. Guys, if you think that the 49ers weren't serious about this negotiation, and Dave is being serious. Dave is good, but there's a lot of dumb comments I'm seeing right now. If you think that this was anything except Dre Greenlaw just choosing a different team because he wanted to be the number one guy, you are very seriously mistaken. I have no other way to put it. And if you still think that after I tell you this, then you're just ignorant, because you have all the facts in front of you and you don't just get to build your own truth in this situation. This comes from Dre Greenlaw's dad, Brian. He said, this is a quote, Greenlaw wanted to be a captain. Hey, man, you stay in San Francisco, you're Scottie Pippen, and Fred Warner's MJ. Go be freaking MJ. Dre Greenlaw wanted to be MJ. He wanted to be the dude. He wanted to run his own shop. 49ers didn't lowball him. They offered him more than Denver. Dre Greenlaw just wanted to leave. And guess what? That's totally fine. That's what free agency is. He's not forced to stay anywhere. That's Dre Greenlaw's prerogative. He did it, but it is low level analysis to try to blame the 49ers for Dre Greenlaw's decision. You heard from his dad today, who said that he didn't want to be Pippen. He wanted to be MJ. So that, there was no lowball offer. You're right. Oh, Dave is talking about the nonsense lowball offer. Yeah, there was no lowball offer to Purdy either. Dave is one of our best commenters, so I'm sure that your comment applied to both cases. But let's be a little bit smarter with some of this stuff. Like, it is absolutely idiotic to suggest that Dre Greenlaw leaving after you heard from Dre Greenlaw's dad today had anything to do with the 49ers. This was Dre wanting to run his own shop, and the 49ers put on the full court press to try to keep him. They did what they could. They controlled what they could. They offered him more money in a year where they're renovating anyway than the Denver Broncos. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan flew out to Texas to meet with Dre Greenlaw. Ultimately, the truth of the matter is the 49ers defense isn't very good right now. Dre Greenlaw said, I'd rather be the number one on linebacker on the number one defense in football. The Broncos were number one last year, than the number two linebacker on a rebuilding defense. I think it is as simple as that. I know that it's as simple as that. I mean, I could say I think all I want, but sometimes we just have to stick with facts. People choose to stay ignorant, and that's life-threatening in the long run. That's a funny comment, I suppose. But right now, it's not that serious. We're just talking about football. It's up to the 49ers to draft well and find Dre's replacement. Yes. Sorry about that. I know it disappeared there very briefly. Computer went to sleep for some reason. It is warm down here in Florida. It is it's in the mid 70s. Probably will be 80 tomorrow. Lombardi yourself is excited to lay by the pool. Mike says that paying Greenlaw is not a good long-term plan anyway. I wonder if the 49ers, were okay with doing it for sentimental reasons. I think that Greenlaw might be exceptional in that he could be an MJ type of player in that he can, come back from injury. He looked awesome against the Rams, but the durability wasn't showcased there, which is why Mike is saying what he's saying. But the 49ers were willing to pay him more than Denver. So there still is something to be said about the offer that they put out there that was bigger than the Broncos. Maybe they believe Greenlaw is absolutely exceptional. Maybe they believe so much they need a 1A and a 1B at linebacker for this defense to be what it is. Or maybe they felt they owed it to Robert Saleh, who came back to be their defensive coordinator and was adamant that Greenlaw stayed. Either way, they did what they could. Greenlaw said no. Sometimes that's life. People should stop whining because you sound like a bunch of crybabies when you can't just accept reality, and that is that Dre Greenlaw wanted to go play for Denver, as is his right. Dre's a great guy, has a right to play wherever the hell he wants. And the sense of entitlement from people thinking, the 49ers didn't offer in time. It's like, shut up. San Francisco offered Dre Greenlaw more money than the Denver Broncos, and he still decided to go to Denver. Sometimes the truth hurts. And as the 49ers don't have a good defense right now, and the Broncos are number one in the league, adding Greenlaw, Hufanga, and DJ Jones. Sometimes I think people need an objective dose of reality, and usually that has to come from this channel. It's like, at some point, the whining is insufferable. And in this Dre Greenlaw case, it's been really bad. The 49ers aren't cheap. They aren't restraining themselves for not wanting to spend. They're trying to rebuild this team as best as they see fit, using a model the only model that's actually ever worked for the long term in the NFL. They're trying to build around pillars. They thought Dre Greenlaw might be one of their pillars, but he said no. So they're going to move forward and pay their other pillars like Brock Purdy, George Kittle, Fred Warner this offseason, and then they're going to have to draft around it to make it work. Somebody here. I have not had a sandwich down here yet. I just flew in this evening. So maybe tomorrow. See, Dave always comes through. Dave Zobel Jr. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. He wants to do his thing. He deserves a chance to do so. Yes. Sometimes it's not any more complicated than that. D. Winters needs to step up. Yes, D. Winters is facing a lot of pressure this season. But we'll see who the 49ers draft. That's going to be a big, big stepping stone in this whole process. Then we'll have the entire depth chart and we'll see how they battle it out at the linebacker room. Yes, people are reporting based off of feelings and not facts anymore. Yeah, you could feel one thing. You could feel they should have kept this guy and that guy. But just look at the cold, hard facts. This defense was bad last year. To make it better, you have to change the way that the talent is coming in. Like, it's as simple as that. And I think that reality is a little bit harder for fans, the emotional fans to accept, because they want to feel that the 49ers are one player away, two players away. I'm sorry. The number 26 defense is not one or two players away. The number 26 defense is maybe an entire good draft class away. And I know they got some good players in 2024 through the draft. That will help. That gives them a bit of a head start in the renovation. But this team tried the Band-Aid patches last year with Floyd, with Malik Collins, Nick Sorensen, a defensive coordinator. The Band-Aids didn't work. The overhaul is what it's going to take. They've gone coaching overhaul. They've brought Robert Saleh back, and now they're going to go talent overhaul through the NFL draft. As Chris points out, the 49ers are still projected to win the division. How about that as we enter the NFL owners meetings? All right, guys, thanks for watching. That's your 49ers intel. I guarantee you can come back here tomorrow. And after John Lynch speaks and after the 49ers have their chance to discuss some of their moves and their strategy, I guarantee you that what we talked about tonight will sound very, very familiar. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.